For our next session, we have Mr. Rajesh Magow, co-founder and Group Chief Executive Officer, Make My Trip. Under Rajesh's stewardship, Make My Trip has not only attained market leadership position in considerably mature market space of air travel, but has also strengthened its dominant position in the underpenetrated online hotel space in India. He's been one of the key contributors in multiple strategic fundraising activities and was instrumental in successfully effecting the company's merger with the Abhi Baaki Group. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Mr. Rajesh Magow.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Well, firstly, it feels so good to be doing this in person, clearly, and not doing this over, if I may call that as stupid Zoom. We've been doing that over the last 2 years. And maybe that's one of the reasons why Zoom stock is under pressure now, and I think it's going to be a lot more under pressure as we do more often all of these conferences in person for sure. So thank you, Manav, for organizing this. I think you and your team is doing a great job. I know when you were trying to do it in Delhi, we were all skeptical. A lot of the people were still having masks on and all, but boy, as I landed in Bombay, I don't see any single soul wearing a mask. And, so we were like, when you wear masks, you feel like an odd man out. And we said, okay, forget about it and let's just get on with it. So life is getting on with it normal, clearly, and that feels great. Now, talking about this session, when I was thinking about it a little more, deeply, I thought there would be two things that we should perhaps talk about it, at least share our thoughts of our learnings. And one part of that was maybe looking back and try and see, while everyone, all of us have been for the last couple of years, have been grappling with severe, unprecedented crisis, maybe once in lifetime kind of a crisis. This whole industry was going through it. But should we actually also focus and see the silver linings? Whatever, maybe one or two that would be there from the last couple of years. And then I guess the second part of that, my thought was that where do we stand today and what should be the outlook from here on? And we saw and heard in the morning, a lot of the positive sentiment since yesterday. I've been meeting a lot of people, and I see the positive sentiment all around, which is great. And this is going to be my attempt in the next 15 to 20 minutes to showcase how should we think about it from the positive outlook standpoint with a lot of the data, because at Make My Trip, that seems to be the DNA of the company. So whenever we have to just see, we don't really believe in anecdotes. We just go back to our consumers, test the anecdotes into the market, and hopefully this will be a lot more reiteration and revalidation coming from the market that you see, besides intuitively we all thinking about it. So let me just get into it straight away. So what has been the story so far? We all know international borders were all tight like it for actually exactly 2 years. There was hardly any international travel that was happening. It was all air bubble arrangement, we all know, but we know air bubble arrangements were really, really tight, and they were only essential travel. Now, be it student segment, be it just going back to your hometowns, home countries, etc., those were the two segments that was really happening. And besides that, there was hardly any leisure that happened. Maybe when the wave 1 recovery was happening or wave 2 recovery was happening, perhaps Dubai and Maldives did a fantastic job, but besides that, there was nothing really happening. So what really united us, what turned out to be the savior, what made sure that the industry kept going, what made sure actually the potential, or it sort of showcased the real potential was the India market and the size of the India market and the size of the country as well as the population. And that's really the story has been so far. And let me just show you just a couple of slides to just back that point. These are some of the pictures that you see, well-known destinations, the Goa, the Manalis, the Masuris, and the Shimlas. And what was the situation there, the amount of serious pent-up demand that we saw in leisure segment, right after wave 1, where there was a little bit of a hope, pent-up demand across the board, people were just wanting to get out, really fatigued and so on. And similar and maybe more accelerated trend that we saw post-wave 2 and then post-Omicron as well. A lot of the new use cases came in, by the way, and there were a huge amount of learnings if you really focus a lot more deeply into it, and you will see that the segments like staycation emerged, the segment like workation emerged, the preference to look for offbeat locations emerged, the preference to look for alternative accommodations emerged. The metro cities were actually also being filled with not necessarily business travel, but also people from the city trying to just taking a break and enjoying the property. All these segments emerged. Isn't that phenomenal? Because that really proves the point of the inherent need for experiencing when it comes to travel. It is not necessarily, and I'll show you all more data around it, but that's what happened, really. And then there were macro tailwinds. I don't think we should forget that because these are very, very important. The previous speaker, Nikhil, spoke about UPI, for example. The fintech revolution from a consumer behavior standpoint is changing. And the reason I make this point here, and I think is very, very relevant from the future outlook standpoint, is it is to do with the consumer behavior, the preferences of paying. As you would see more and more data, you would realize that the convenience of making the payments through the backbone of the UPI, which has been created in India, probably the only country that has been able to create this size of a backbone to be able to handle this kind of a scalability, and with a sheer amount of convenience for the consumers is only us. And that has been the game changer, and therefore the preference is to pay less. And even the street hawkers are taking payments on UPI today, right? The front end might be anything, and many companies are leveraging that, but the backbone remains this whole infrastructure. And that has been the game changer. And similarly, book now, pay later, and I'll talk about that. And then there is infrastructure, right? The rise of infrastructure. I think we sometimes forget about it, end up taking it for granted, but I think the amount of progress that has happened on infrastructure is phenomenal. I'll show you some of that data. And then there is, everybody has been talking about digitization, overall e-commerce, but I'll show you some nuanced data on that as well. So look at rise of infrastructure first. If you look at any of these charts, call it expressways, call it highways, airports, Udan airports, everywhere you will see either 2x or 5x growth happening. Like phenomenal. And the projections are even more higher. So if you had 74 airports, have gone to 140, is going to go to 220 airports. Look at the expressway. Phenomenal 10x growth in 3 years. 2017 to 2022, 5 years. And in next 3 years, it's going to go to 10,000. Right? And these are the backbones. This is how the travel and tourism is going to move, and all segments. So we should just keep that in mind always, that there has been, behind the scene, there has been tremendous amount of progress that has been happening on infrastructure. All right, so UPI we have already spoken about. I want to spend like 1 minute on book now, pay later. I think this is going to be the next single biggest driver for consumer growth. What is happening? If you take your mind back, the consumer loans used to be used to be powered by who? Used to be provided by traditional banks, traditional financial services companies. Now what's happening? Now the data is being leveraged. Data that we have, the companies like we have, like us, that is being leveraged as an input for the new age financial services companies for them to be able to take an instant call and give the consumer loan. I'll give you Brazil's example. I don't know how many of you would know, there is a ticket size of the purchase out there is as tiny as 400 rupees or 200 rupees or 300, and people end up taking EMIs. People end up taking loans and pay in like 10 rupees installment or a 20 rupees installment in their obviously local currency, but just trying to make the point that it's like the ticket size for consumer loan is going to go down significantly And for all categories and segments are going to get benefited out of it. What does this do? We all know economics, if there is more sort of availability of funding liquidity, rather than saving money for us to be able to then take a holiday, I'm just going to change. This is going to drive the change in behavior. The money is available. You can pay it over the period of time, especially with millennials and the youngsters, because that's the way they have been living. That's the way they like to spend money, and so on, right? So I think this is going to be a game changer. Watch this very, very clearly. The 2- and 3-tier cities demand. I was telling you about the infrastructure, the connectivity is improving. When we look at the search data on our platform, some of these cities that I've highlighted, 1 or 2, I didn't even know. The amount of searches that are coming on our platform. Because, people have the smartphone. Smartphone penetrations have gone through the roof. About 500, 600 million people have smartphones in India and have data plans which are very, very cheap, and therefore it is very easy for them to be able to, very convenient for people to be able to fulfill their desires and the needs just on a click of a button. Look at the e-commerce penetration. The national level, all categories put together, the penetration is about 36%. Top 9 cities are more than 60%, but see the last graph, the last bar chart here, less than 5 lakh population, 22% already. And 10 to 40 lakh by population, it is catching up with the national average. So that's the kind of penetration that is happening. And therefore, when we talk about digitization, when you see with this kind of data and actually what is happening down to the Bharat population, it will force you, it will really, really force you to think about your strategies, keeping all these things in mind. All right, so story so far, this has been the story so far, right? But clearly, just the beginning. Because like I mentioned, the idea was to just also see where we stand today and what is going to be the outlook. And therefore, the term which became very popular, a lot of people said, but this was not my doing. I think it was Manav who desired a catchy headline, and it was Vipul who gave this catchy headline to Manav. But essentially what we are trying to say here is best is yet to come. And watch it. Okay, let's talk about consumer sentiment first. This is one thing, one graph that we followed, by the way, like a holy grail during the entire pandemic. What is this? This is like an NPS kind of a survey, going to the consumer and asking about consumer sentiment about what do you feel about travel, would you like to travel, and so on, right? And you would see how the graph has been moving. April 20, which was the first month right after pandemic, which was the month where Make My Trip revenue dropped by 95%, believe it or not. The sentiment was minus 40. There were 64% detractors. 24% people who still said we would travel were essentially the essential travel, right? See now, fast forward, come to March 22. See, 55% of the people are saying that we would like to travel, and 23% are in the yellow, which effectively means I'm sitting on the fence, but given an opportunity, I would love to travel. The detractors have gone down to 21. So all-time high, minus 40 going to plus 34. I bet you do it in April today, which we will do and we can share. This 34 number will be 54. So that's what is happening. Consumer sentiment is all-time high. This is the India, I would say predominantly leisure segment, but some of the other segments. But I'll show you some of the other data on the other segments as well. We see these are the 2 other segments. Because see, when we look at travel, hospitality, travel and tourism, hospitality, we should be looking at holistically, because there are hotels who would be business city hotels, there will be hotels, there will be leisure destination focused, there will be pilgrimage destinations. So therefore, when we have to see the industry growth, we should be seeing it holistically, TNT, all segments put together. Pilgrimage cities, the growth is coming back. I think, this 2x growth versus platform on March 19. March 19 was obviously got impacted by a pandemic at that point in time. So therefore, I would not say this pilgrimage demand has come back to pre-pandemic level, but see the growth number, it is getting there. It is very promising number. Business travel, on the other hand, we believe that the industry levels, about 65% as of today, as of March, the recovery has happened. A couple of months ago, it was only 40%. it is coming back. And our estimate is by end of June, it will be back to 85%. So these segments, all segments are sort of picking up. All right. I thought it would be also interesting to make a point here and collect some data and make a point. This is the only data that we've used from the public source. That, just to address the fear. A lot of the people, even in the morning, there was one question that Anurag was asking Vipul, right? So what happens? Is this story temporary? Is this temporary? Domestic market saved us, but then guess what? International borders have opened up, outbound travel is going to happen. And therefore, purposely, I pulled out the consumer sentiment across the globe. And as you would see, Asian countries, EMEA, US, across the board, 50%. Maybe a little dated, I'm telling you, April, May, if you go, it'll be more than 50% that people wanting to travel. And then alongside the graph is very, very interesting, that India is actually inching up in Asia as one of the popular destinations to come in. So if there is going to be, for some reasons, that people would say, and talk about one or two reasons that we need to continuously keep working on, that people will go outbound. Yes, you can't just hold on consumers. They would love to. They haven't really been traveling international destinations. They might end up just doing that, but you will have a lot of the tourists converging here as well. So my point really here is that the demand side, the consumer sentiment is very, very optimistic right now. Fingers crossed on no real other disruption like COVID. We'll see how it goes. And now, these days, I have started to reconcile to the fact that the disruption is going to be, no disruption means that it should not be severe. The numbers might still happen. The wave might still come. IIT Kanpur prediction might still hold good. But as long as it is not severe, no hospitalization rate happening, no fatality happening, I think we'll be fine. So I think we should keep all of these things in mind. Now, very quickly touching upon what is, some more data, and I think there will be some learnings from a product experience standpoint for you guys as well as you look at your strategies. What are the 5 trends that we believe that is going to shape the future travel as well? And this is based on all our survey from all our consumer base and all of that. The first of all, very important, gone are the days when everybody was thinking travel is necessity. It is not roti kapda makan anymore. It is internet in 2016, and then people have moved on and saying, we need to get out, we need to experience. And it is overall experience, and travel is one form of experience. I think just eating out, socializing, meeting, etc., is another sort of a trend that's emerging. 80% of the people feel that they want to travel. I mean, the travel is not really a necessity. Likely to spend more on travel. 52%, I made that point to you on BNPL, 52% that they would be very willing to take loan on travel. Very, very interesting. Travelers will seek more control. And I think it is so true. And it is actually getting more and more true. I think Rohit was making the point in the morning on the digitization, the native digitization. The new generation is only born with all these technologies, wanting to see, starting at a 4th standard or a 3rd standard with a smartphone or a tab. And that is how they are going to grow, and the youngsters and so on. And what do they end up doing? They have ton of data, ton of content that is available. They are going to look at the reviews. They are going to ask for more, and they're going to go places. Insta has become the place for youngsters to go. They listen to influencers and so on, but that's what is going to happen. And therefore, all that we need to do is to be cognizant of that, but more fundamentally keep working on the experience at the property level as well. Indian women, we all knew, women are obviously getting more and more, involved, more and more powerful. Look at the entrepreneurship, in India, it's just exploding, if you ask me, from a diversity standpoint. From travel, we all knew they were always sort of behind the scene decision makers. But I think what was interesting here was rise in solo women traveler by 3x. That was a bit of a surprise. I thought it was growing, I knew, but I didn't realize it was 3x. So people are just wanting to experience and getting out. All right. Millennial parents, very interesting. What are parents thinking? Parents are thinking that, and this is thanks to the screen time, by the way. The technology also brings in, it's sort of downside at times, right? I mean, this is about the youngsters or the kids, etc., or everybody sort of on the screen time, and everybody's saying, okay, get out of the screen time, let us start traveling, at least you will be off the screen time. Somebody made an example of saying, who's looking at the hoarding? I think Rohit mentioned that. And maybe all of us oldies in the room are looking at the hoardings because everyone else is on screen, right? But the point here is that parents specifically now, we are very, very cognizant, and they want to take their kids out. And last but not the least, I would say, dekho apna desh is going to continue on the back of the infrastructure expansion. I don't think it's going to stop, because I showed you the projections on the infrastructure that's going to go up and only going to expand further. People are loving to see more and more destinations, offbeat destinations. They want to explore. They don't want to go to the run-of-the-mill now. They just want to go and explore. We have seen about 2,000 hotels coming up in the last few months in Tier 2, Tier 3 cities. More and more growth is happening. That's only happening because people are seeing the demand. The content from the influencer side also is changing. And part of that is because last 2 years, people have just been going out in India, getting fascinated by the location and all. And here I would say just one word of caution. I think as industry, we need to work together, not necessarily keep working with the government and keep pushing, but also with public-private partnership, figure out ways of just making sure only one thing, the destination experience. Commuting and the commuting, I think it is sorted out now with expressways and the rest. The destination infra experience needs to improve, expand, where at a speed it's happening, but it needs to expand a lot more so that people enjoy. One of the risks that we have where consumers want to probably step out is only that, because our main cities get overwhelmed. Because if there's going to be jam that you will not be able to go to Rohtang Pass because there's going to be a 10-kilometer long queue on the cars, it's not a great experience. Just as an example of that. I think that is something that we should be cognizant, but not taking the point away that there is a huge amount of potential. All right, so what's the conclusion? The conclusion for me and for us at Make My Trip is that the consumer sentiment is really positive. The demand side is, I think, fine, thank God, after 2 years. You would see revenge, pent up, whatever the term that you want to give it, on a sustained basis. So from that point of view, given that, I don't know whether you realize, given that this is a hotel investment conference, it's actually a pitch to the investors on behalf of my partner colleagues. Hotel partner colleagues from that point of view. I think you should look at long-term view, huge amount of potential, look for investment, don't ignore India as a market. And then we all have a collective job to actually do the execution on the ground, experience. A lot of people, by the way, were talking about experience. I can tell you a personal experience. I was sharing it with the team earlier. I have personally seen service levels dropping with the premium properties also. I think we need to get back very quickly to get that house in order. We need to execute. If this is a potential, we need to execute really, really well. And then I'm sure we should be able to deliver a blockbuster for the investors, for your stakeholders, for our stakeholders. Thank you so much. I know time's up, and I don't know if you have any question. Otherwise, I am around, and we can always chat. Thank you.